Okay, this was your 422 quiz that we had on functions and operations with functions. I didn't get a chance to go over it in class, so we're going to have another quiz on something like this. So let me go over these problems so you at least get a chance to correct what you did, because you already passed them back. Okay, so first of all, we want to find, these are our two functions. So what I'll do is I'll do the f of x in blue and the g of x in green. And number one, we wanted just to find f of x plus g of x, f of x plus g of x. So that was just going to be 5x plus 4 plus x squared minus 2x minus 3. So you just have to add these up. Now remember, sometimes this notation can be seen as f plus g of x. Of x, something like this. So that's another way of writing the sum. So either f of x plus g of x or f plus g of x. It's the same thing. And then when we add these up, we end up with, combine our like terms, and we have just an x squared over here, x squared, and then 5x minus 2x is plus 3x, and then 4 minus 3 is 1. So there's your sum. Okay? And then number 2, we want to take the difference. So number 2 was f of x minus g of x. So we just take the difference, and that's going to be equal to 5x plus 4. Now minus, now I'm going to do this with a parentheses because remember we're subtracting the whole thing, and the whole g of x has got 3 terms. So each of those terms will be affected by this negative sign. So x squared minus 2x minus 3. So when I remove the parentheses, I'll have 5x plus 4 and then this is going to be minus x squared. Minus times a minus is a positive 2x, and we could say a negative times a negative is a positive 3. So these signs change, all of them change. So then when we simplify this, we have and we do it in descending power, so we have a negative x squared, and then 5x plus 2x is 7x, and then 4 plus 3 is 7. So that's your f of x minus g of x. And like I said, it could also be written in this form, f minus g of x. All right. So hope that makes sense. Number 3, so if you didn't get that correct, double check your work and see if you can fix it. So f of x times g of x. So that's going to be 5x plus 4 times x squared minus 2x. So now we have to multiply this out. We've got a binomial times a trinomial, so we're going to have 2 times 3, 6 multiplications. We do have descending powers, so we'll have some terms that are alike that we can line up and save some work. So we'll multiply. So I multiply everything by 5x. I get 5x cubed. (5x cubed) minus 10x squared, and then minus 15x, double check. So my x's are going to go cubed, squared, and 1, and then 5 times 1 is 5, times 2 is 10, 5 times 3 is 15. So double check. And then I'll multiply everything by 4. So I get 4x squared plus 4x squared. And then I get negative 8x. And I get a positive times a negative is a negative 12. So there we go. And then we could add all those up. And we had some terms that were like terms in x squared and x. So that's usually going to happen if both factors are in descending powers. So we end up with 5x cubed. And negative 10x squared plus 4x squared is negative 6x squared. That's negative 23x and negative 12. So there's your difference. And then number 4. Number 4, we just had to take the quotient. And again, I guess you could see this as f times g of x. Same, just a different way of writing it. Okay, and then number 4, f of x divided by g of x. So f of x is just 5x plus 4. Oops, should have that in green, I'm sorry. That's going to be 5x plus 4 on the top. And on the bottom, we've got x squared minus 2x minus 3. And there's not much we can do with this unless we can factor and maybe simplify it. Well, we can't really simplify it, but we can factor. And if we can factor, we can at least put restrictions on our domain. Because it's hard to tell what's going to be 0 here. But if I do factor this, and it is a simple trinomial, x and x, and I multiply to give 3, different by 2, so it'll be 3 and 1. So negative 3 plus 1. Now double check it. A negative 3x and a plus 1x is negative 2x, and a negative times a positive is a negative 3, so that does check out. So what I can do is, if I can't factor the bottom, it's a little bit easier to see the restrictions on the domain. Remember, we cannot have 0 in the denominator. So any value of x that will make that 0, we can't have. So we'd have to say that x cannot equal 3 or negative 1. Because if x equals 3, I've got 3 minus 3, which is 0. If x equals negative 1, I got negative 1 plus 1, which is 0. Can't have 0 in the denominator. So those are the restrictions on the domain. Okay. And then number 5, we asked you to write f of g of x. Of g of x. This is a composite function. Oh, we could probably maybe write number 4 as f divided by g of x. F divided by g of x. We could write it like that also. That's another way of seeing that notation. All right, so now we have a composite function, so f of g of x. So what I usually ask you to do is write your f rule first. So the f of something, what is that? Well, that's going to be, if I go back up here, this is going to be 5 times something plus 4. See, whatever the x is that goes there. So if I put a blank there, it's going to be 5 times something plus 4. And that what we want is we want to write f of g of x. So every time I see a blank, I'm going to put a g of x. And if you do it like this, it's a little bit extra work, but you won't make any mistakes. Okay? So f of g of x equals 5 times g of x, but what was g of x plus 4? Well, g of x was x squared minus 2x minus 3, so I put that in for g of x. X squared minus 2x minus 3. And then I just multiply out. This is now it's an algebra 1 problem. Just distribute and combine like terms. So that's going to be 5x squared minus 10x minus 15 plus 4, and I can combine the numerical terms, so I've got 5x squared minus 10x minus 11. Is that all right? Okay, and then number 6. And I get a sheet of paper. So number 6 was just to find the inverse. And we didn't have to verify it. Just had to find the inverse. So let's take a look at this. Find f inverse of x. All right, so f inverse of x. First thing we do, we know that f of x equals 5x plus 4. So step 1 is call this y. So step 1, we call that y. Step 2, we reverse the x and y. So x equals 5y plus 4. And then step 3, we just solve for y. So first of all, I would subtract 4 from both sides, so x minus 4 equals 5y, then I divide both sides by 5. So y equals x minus 4 over 5. And step 4, call y f inverse of x. And that's all you had to do. Now we had an extra credit problem and some other things that I want you to know, so I'll go over those on the next video. That'll be part 2.